your response to my commentary, and I appreciated the distinction that you made between the description of God at the beginning of Psalm 23 and then the concept of encountering God at the end. And in my work with patients, I notice that they really have a range of experience, and some of them actually feel that they're encountering God much more now that they're ill. So your commentary led me to the question, how can we as spiritual caregivers, what can we do to help patients who are ill, people who are ill, to enter an encounter with God? Are there things that you do to help enliven that encounter for people?
Mm. Well, I think because of my background, as part of the Jewish healing movement and as a social worker, I sort of, as the saying goes, meet people where they are. And so I'm always sort of aware of trying to enhance or create some kind of, or help someone feel a connection to God or encounter God. I think in some ways it's different with a rabbi, in a rabbinic position. I just want to make that distinction because somehow with rabbis, people project all this God stuff onto them.
Yeah.
Whereas with a social worker, I don't come with that kind of background for many people. So when people are ill and they sort of raise the question about God in any fashion, any way that I see an opening, I will use to help facilitate that connection. And I think that what Stuart Foreman talks about was really right on, that you want to, depending on where the person is in the stage of the illness, depending how open they are, would then depend on what I would offer them as an encounter with God. And I think that when people are ill, my experience is they're much more open to this. And the opposite. They could be the opposite. They could say, you know what? I don't even want to talk about God while I'm ill. And I'm open, and then of course I'm open to that as well. I don't have any sort of agenda.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the essence, I think, for any of us is to walk in without the agenda, and that this kind of conversation about God, for me, really only comes up if they bring it up.
Exactly.
But in your comments, I'm hearing some of this delicate dance that I feel I need to do also, which is,
Mm.
yes, we want to meet people where they are, and sometimes people are looking for us to, I don't know if nudge them in a direction is quite the right word, but they're looking for different perspectives. And so how do you walk that line between providing a somewhat different perspective without preaching? Because I think preaching is something that any of us can do. I mean, I know one way that I do that is if there's an opening, if I'm going to say something that is descriptive, that's something other than just drawing them out, I make it very, very short, very brief.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Oh, absolutely.
so are there things that you do to walk in that dance?
Absolutely. I think it's so important to have a repertoire. And just as you say, and so depending on the situation and depending on what the person offers me, I then may suggest, you may like this song, let's say, by Debbie Friedman, who really speaks to what you're saying. It may be something you're interested in. Or you may find it interesting do you know about the prayer that traditional Jews say every morning? It may be something, you're really talking about gratitude. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that. So my goal is to have as much of a repertoire, and then it may be something secular, quote unquote. It may be some other book or music or prayer, or it may be Rumi. It could be anything that I feel really speaks to what they're saying, because my goal always is have the connection to me, so that in the sense of, if they don't feel connected to me at all, they're not going to feel open to anything I have to say. So my goal is to be listening. Obviously, it goes without saying that I'm there and I'm offering my presence and I'm listening. And so if they feel that I've listened in a way that speaks to what they've said, maybe directly or indirectly, then the conversation continues. So it's about matching what they're saying, what I think I'm hearing, with available resources. And Stuart Foreman talks about that. He says that quote. I love that. I really thought that the effective use of literature depends on the stage and emotional, spiritual maturity of the patient. I don't know, maturity, but in the sense of where they are on their own journey.
Right. I often feel that I'm listening a little bit under what somebody is saying, so that I'm listening for what is the emotion, what's the core emotion that they're wrestling with. And so that sometimes, I think earlier in my career I did a little bit more reflecting back, and I think now I do more reflecting under
Mm.
to get
You know,
try to
it's
get to that next level.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And that was, my training as a social worker was reflecting back and active listening, etc. But of course, it's always listening what's under. Person comes with quote unquote the presenting problem, but then we're listening for what's under that presenting problem. There's no problem, quote unquote. That's a social work term. So I agree with you. I think that that's what's so beautiful about the work that we're doing in Jewish healing, in spiritual care, with chaplaincy, through spiritual direction, those different forms of encounters with the folks that we meet. I think we're living in a really wonderful time that we get that our goal is to offer presence and to listen to what they're actually saying, and sometimes just the act of speech for them helps them articulate what they didn't even know that they were
I think that's
thinking.
right. Yeah.
Mm.
With your social work background, you're probably familiar with him too, but I'm really inspired by Carl Rogers.
Oh yeah.
And so I'm always looking to bring out what is the wisdom that resides within my
Mm.
patients.
Mm. It's so amazing that you talk about Carl Rogers, because I actually studied social work at Tel Aviv University, and Carl Rogers was one of the seminal theorists that we studied. But then, all these years later, I have a friend who graduated from a local fabulous social work college, and she said that she did not learn much about Carl Rogers, and that he wasn't thought of so much in her training as sophisticated as some other theorists. Why is that? And we talked about it, and it's sad because he offers the sort of the basic encounter of two people, that's simple and not so simple. So I couldn't agree with you more that I think his work is fabulous.
Yeah, I mean, I guess he's the Martin Buber of psychology.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. But then again, as I was saying, it depends on which social work school you go to. I'm sure it's the
Yes.
same with rabbinical school. What you learn, who your teachers are. He's one of my favorites.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's
Mm,
been wonderful to talk with you. I think
mm.
I so thank you so much for sharing this experience with me.